And so judging yourself, judging others, and judging the circumstance all come from the same type of saboteur, this inner judge.
Hi, and welcome to Lead Well.
Have you ever had this inner voice that told you you're not good enough? Or the thought that you cannot be happy because the situation is just not right? You would be happy if you would get that new car, if you would get that new job, if you would get promoted, if you would have enough money. Or that thought that, yeah, today it's too late or early, or it's too hot or too cold outside to go for that run. I can always do it tomorrow. What do these thoughts have in common? In positive intelligence, we believe or we are positioning those thoughts as the result of having saboteurs. And I love this approach because what this tells me is that it's not me that is really faulty. It's not me that is having all those strange thoughts, but there is somebody, a little figurine sitting on my shoulder, or maybe even in my head, nagging and telling me all the stuff that I'm not good enough, that I'm not doing well enough, that I should do better, I should do more of, I should help others more. And that is, I think, a really interesting way of looking at it because it keeps me, my precious, wise self, untouched. And so I can always fall back to what I really want and I really need. But let's look into those saboteurs first, because identifying them, catching them when they are sitting on our shoulders, when they are talking to us, when they are trying to influence us by telling us stories about what's happening in our lives, is really helpful to then be able to say, okay, no, I won't listen. And I will be able to do what I really want. So those little figurines, as I already said, we call them saboteurs. And in positive intelligence, we have identified 10 of them. The first one being the Master Saboteur. Now, the Master Saboteur is the judge, my inner judge. And my inner judge, I always thought I didn't have an inner judge because, yeah, I feel I'm pretty good, so I'm good enough. But hey, my husband, look at him, what he's doing. So my inner judge always asks the question, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with my husband? Why is he doing the things that he's doing? And there is an aspect of the judge that also says, what's wrong with this situation, or what's wrong with this outcome? So we could say that our inner judge has three different aspects. And the what's wrong with me, I'm not good enough. That's the one that's probably most known as being the inner critic that is keeping us from feeling good, keeping us from feeling content with what we are, with what we're doing. And this is what I was aware of. And I thought, I don't have that inner critic. However, yes, my inner critic has taken on a different mask and is judging others. And so, judging yourself, judging others, and judging the circumstance all come from the same type of saboteur, this inner judge. Now, where does this judge come from? First of all, it is already part of us being human. Think about any person not having an inner critic at all, not having an inner judge at all. They wouldn't feel human. So it is part of our personality. And then, of course, it also grows over the course of our lives because we have people telling us that we're not good enough. Maybe our parents telling us you could do that better. You should be able to do that. So go ahead. Why can't you do it? What's wrong with you? And this, of course, makes this little judge sitting on my shoulder, how I imagine him, grow because it gives him additional strength. And we don't acknowledge that this is something that is, I would even say, outside of us, sabotaging us. We think we're doing that to ourselves. And that's why I believe and I strongly feel that this way of personalizing the judge as such and detaching it from our inner self, from our sage, from our wiser self is so helpful because then I can say, okay, stop it. I don't want to listen to you anymore. I even want you to go away. Wait for me in another place. I can pick you up whenever I feel like I need a little piece of advice from you, but not now. So, this is why I feel this having the saboteurs as a little figure that I can work with, that I can talk to, so helpful. Now, how can I deal with my inner judge? What can we do to actually interrupt the saboteur and preventing this inner judge from having a bad influence in our lives? Before we look into that, you might say, well, Christine, isn't it also a good thing to question yourself, to not think you're the best in the world, to also question others and question the environment? Because if I wouldn't question my environment, would I ever change? No, probably not. So it's really helpful to change based on the thought, well, actually, maybe I could do things better. Maybe the situation could be better. And yes, absolutely right. The way we look at it in positive intelligence is like pain. Is it good to feel pain? And while in our society, pain really is regarded as something very, very bad, it has a good component because, hey, there are people who do not feel pain. And guess what? They always get hurt because they have no alarm system. So think about a hot stove and you putting your hand on this hot stove. It's great that I feel the pain, so I know I need to take my hand away. However, what those little saboteurs are doing, it's like they're pressing my hand on the hot stove and telling me, yeah, Christine, that hurts, doesn't it? It doesn't feel good, does it? So I need to free myself from that grip. And how I can do that is actually very, very easy. Well, very, very simple, I should say, because it's not that easy, because it requires work. It is what we talked about in the last episode, growing your mental muscle. PQ reps, as we call them, to build your mental muscle, are nothing other than interrupters. They interrupt our saboteurs so that we can refocus on our inner wiser sage, as we call it. So, the wiser being that we are. And those interrupters, we need to train to do them so that if things get worse, if I have this voice in my head that is telling me, well, what have you done again, Christine? I know, okay, I take my pen and look at my pen and focus on my pen. And immediately this voice will disappear. And then, of course, I can, with my wiser sage perspective, as we call it, look at the things and yes, inquire. What is it that I could have done differently? What is it that I could learn from the situation so that everything that happens to me can be turned in anything that happens for me? And understanding that there is this little saboteur or the 10 saboteurs, as a team, trying to influence me, trying to make me think that I'm not good enough, that I'm not successful enough, that I'm not helpful enough, that I have lost control. If I can understand that those are the saboteurs at work, I can then interfere with my little PQ reps. Stop that way of thinking, which doesn't lead to anything else but pain, and start thinking about what actually can I do to better the situation and to better how I feel. So let me give you an insight into what other saboteurs there are that influence us. We talked about the judge, who really is the main saboteur, the master saboteur. We all have them in some shape or form. And so this judge has helpers, accomplices. One of them is the controller, the one that tells me you need to have things under control. Otherwise, we're doomed. It's the hyperachiever that always tells me, well, there is a star out there and you'll never get there. Because if you have delivered a successful presentation, well, there is no time to celebrate because there are other things to do, more things to do, better things to do. You always have to be better than others. And then there is this restless saboteur that always tells us, well, that's okay. You're doing this, but there are 10 other things that you probably are not doing at the moment. So make sure you get to them and make sure you don't spend too much time on this first one so that you have time for the other 10. Then there is this saboteur, the stickler, that says we have to really be very, very precise. We have to make things perfect because otherwise there is no avail. And there is always something that is not perfect enough in what you're doing. The pleaser. The pleaser thinks that people will only like you if you're doing whatever you can to help them, to support them, to please them. That's when you will get their love. That's when you will get their attention. And you should always put them above yourself. Don't care about your own wants and needs. Everyone else is more important. That is the little pleaser saboteur. Hypervigilant is the one who sees danger everywhere. Everything is dangerous. Life is bad. Life is dangerous. Everyone out there wants to hurt me. The avoider is the one that says, okay, yeah, there are things to do, but guess what? I think if I do them tomorrow, that's early enough. And I don't want to have that hard conversation with my neighbor because he might not like me anymore. Nevertheless, I can live with that. Then we have the victim who always feels like a victim. If there is anything bad happening, it's happening to the victim. There are some bad people out there that do me wrong. They want me to feel bad. And so I'm the victim that cannot change that. The last saboteur is really the hyper rational saboteur. The one who feels like, well, let's not deal with emotions because there is a fact, because there is a rational reason. Everything can be rationalized, everything can be explained without paying attention to emotions, regardless that people are emotional beings. No, let's not look at that. Let's be rational and let's only look at the facts and figures. When listening to that, you probably have heard me exaggerating. And that's exactly what the saboteurs are. Yes, My wiser self has a component that loves to help others for the sake of others. I want to achieve something because otherwise mankind wouldn't move, wouldn't make any progress. But not to the point where I never have achieved enough. Our saboteurs, they make us believe that they help us. But at the end of the day, they're keeping our hands on this hot stove. And that is not helpful at all. So, what can you do? First of all, you might want to do the saboteur assessment. And the link is, of course, in the description and in the show notes. You figure out which are the ones that are most active for me. It's so interesting to then compare them to others, maybe family members, and see where are you the same, where are you different. Often conflict also comes from different saboteurs at work. And the second step really is then to stop them, to interfere, to say, okay, this is you, got you. And now I'm doing this little PQ rep to stop you from harassing me, from impacting my stronger, wiser self. And so let's do one of these interrupters together. Before in the next episode, we will then look into what actually are the powers, the strength of this wiser inner self, the sage, as we call it. To activate my sage, I need these interrupters. Now, again, let's take any object and look at it very, very closely. Can be a pen, can be a glass, any plant in your environment, any object that you have close to you. And now look at it in great detail. Follow the shape. Observe the color and how it changes with light and shadow. Scan it with your eyes as if you wanted to make a picture from it. Do that while you're taking 3 breaths, because that's about 10 seconds. And that's all it takes to tell our saboteurs that now they can have a break because we are refocusing on our wiser inner self. Now have fun with practicing your interrupters, your PQ reps. And I'll see you again next week when we'll talk about the stage powers and how they can help us have a more fulfilled and happier life. Bye for now.
This was Lead Well. Now, what is the one thing that you're taking away from this episode? Please share in the comments below and do share the podcast with your friends and family, but only if you like it.